Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to the journey back from domestic violence. I'm your girl, Author Erica. I have my friend on today with me, Dominique. She's gonna tell her story. As you all know, we are in the pandemic, and we have a lot of women that's going through domestic violence right now. And we want to share this platform so that women could tell their story and help out the next lady that's going through whatever they may be going through. So Dominique gonna share her story, and Dominique, you could just take it from here.
Okay, so based on my experience, obviously abuse comes in many different forms. Mine started at a young age. I was a competitive athlete. I was a gymnast. And that being said, there is a lot of controversy circling around, athletics and, coaches and things like that. And unfortunately, at a young age, I was a statistic. Um, I went through the process. I believe I was about 8 years old, and I had to testify with police against my gymnastics coach. At
Wow.
a young age, you're more resilient, so it wasn't necessarily something I had thought would affect me long term. Moving forward, bouncing from job to job, going through the normal day to day life, I found myself in this cycle of finding people to bring into my life that all had the same um, attributes, if you will. A lot of
Okay.
them had tempers, a lot of them had, um, you know, a hand problem, if you will. So moving forward with that, as an adult, I had met a man, and at the gym, things seemed all sunshines and rainbows, and oh my gosh, we're breaking the cycle. Going through that, um, I didn't recognize the signs, which I think is very important to women, especially bouncing back from domestic violence or trying to break that cycle, is recognizing the signs. Um, I was unaware that I was getting thrown red flags in my face left and right until it was too late. Um, it started with my friends. I was isolated from every friend that I had. Um, and then it just became more of a brainwash. I wasn't aware of what was going on. Um, Living in the same town, I was isolated from my family for close to 6 years, living
Wow.
4 miles away. Um, and I was just in a position where I was so brainwashed that I thought that it was okay, that they were the source of the problem. They have these tactics, the narcissism that goes into it, of manipulation. So that going forward, completely isolated. I had been planning to get married to him. He did propose. That being said, the marriage did not happen until I was fully isolated.
Wow.
Once I was fully isolated, I more or less got pressured into getting married at the courthouse.
Wow.
That I didn't get any kind of wedding, um, any of that stuff that a woman, or anybody would love to go through. So we were married, and the physical abuse, started 2 weeks after our vows were said. It started off small, shoving, um, you know, really heated arguments, things of mine being broken, TVs, furniture, personal items, cell phones. Um, so at that point, I knew something was wrong,
Mhm.
but then that's where the narcissism plays into it.
Right.
It's, oh, well, you caused this. If you hadn't
Right.
said this, if
Hmm.
you hadn't said that, you get to a point where you question your own reality. Maybe I
Right.
am the problem. So going forward, I was making excuses, until it started getting really bad. Um, there are a lot of instances that things got serious. And I want people to know, and that's why this is so important to me to tell my story, because a lot of women are afraid. And like me, I was afraid. I didn't know how to get out. All I knew is that I needed to protect myself and from anyone finding out, in fear of the repercussions. Um, but one instance in particular, um, I had threatened to leave, more or less.
Right.
That being said, the situation had escalated, and I was thrown into glass coffee tables, picture
Wow.
frames. I got thrown through the drywall, to
Wow.
the point where I was pretty beaten up. Um, I wasn't taken to the hospital until 4 hours later. And with that, he sat in the room, caused a scene, and I wasn't able to tell my story as to what really happened to the medical
Right.
professionals who were helping me. And I think that that's really important. It's a violation in a lot of ways of HIPAA. And I
Right.
feel like if hospital staff, and that's another thing that I want to start getting into is, if the hospital staff feels that that's what's going on, there needs to be some sort of silent language or investigation, because in that instance, I was crying out for help and I was so far in that I could not escape. Um, and that also plays later on down the road. You know, Moving forward, about a year and a half later, I got roped into purchasing a home. Um, Mind you, my finances were controlled. He did not work. And when he did work, he would get fired or find a reason to quit. So that way he could siphon my money, which is another
Right.
form of control.
So,
Um, so I would be at work, and while I was being tracked via GPS or friends driving by, what have you, my funds were being siphoned to the point where I couldn't pay my own bills or buy personal hygiene products. And I just feel that women need to understand that just because a man doesn't lay his hands on you initially doesn't mean that he doesn't have that audacity. It starts small with control, finances, friends, isolation. So once you get too far in, it is very hard to get out. And mind you, in the days of my abuse, I was actively being abused for close to 3.5 years.
wow.
And with that, I was actively trying to find a way out. I tell people when I tell my story, it was the longest game of chess I've ever played in my life. You have to play your cards right. You have to understand the repercussions of doing certain things, not right away. Um, Calling the police isn't always the answer, depending on your state and the way that laws are written. Fortunately for me, I did a lot of research and I learned how to delete my browsing history.
Right.
Um, I was using other people's phones. So, with that, there kind of was like that breaking, defining moment. I had a really bad incident. I came home from work, and at the time, I was working close to 65 hours a week, coming home, cooking dinner, cleaning, housework, yard work, getting on the roof, cleaning the gutters. I mean, doing everything.
Wow.
And he approached me and said, "Oh, well, I found you another job and it's for your only day off, but you're going to take it to support my drug habit."
Wow.
And I mean, obviously, that wasn't the exact words, but more or less that's how I interpreted it. Um, and an incident ensued. A candle was lit for close to 2.5 hours. There was wax everywhere, all over me. So I locked myself in the bathroom, and that was my defining moment. I looked at myself in the mirror and I said, I would rather be dead than live a life like this. It's not worth it. So I made a point at that moment, you're going to have to fight. So
Yeah.
I started going to the gym, and at the time of my last run in, if you will, um, I was probably leg pressing close to 400 pounds at 5 foot.
Right.
So I more or less was training for war. Um,
Right.
and in those moments, I knew that that was going to be my saving grace. I was like, I'm done. If I have to die trying to get out of here, at least women will know my story and women will know sometimes you have to fight your way out and it gets dirty.
Yes.
Um, but that being said, that afternoon, I had come up with a game plan. I reached out to my family who I hadn't talked to in close to 5 years, and I spilled my guts and I told them everything.
Right.
And well, later on that afternoon, I went to the house, told him I'm out. I'm collecting my things, so on and so forth.
Right.
Um, in my case, here where I live, I started paying attention to the few times that I did call the police, their response time.
Right.
And I had noticed that it was an average of 17 to 24 minutes that they would respond to a 911 call.
Correct.
That being said, I knew that I would have to fight my way out or defend myself for at least 25
One
minutes.
minute. Yep.
So on my way there, I had my mother in the front seat, and my car was, a hoopty, if you will, zip tied door handles. I mean, this thing was battered. Um, I came up with a plan, and I had my mother call 911 and basically tell them that I was, in the house and so on and so forth as I was already going in there. So that way,
Uh-huh.
by the time that the incident took place, that I wouldn't
Yes.
have that much long in
Much longer to
between.
fight. Mm-hmm.
Correct. That being said, moving forward, I went into the bedroom, and my house that I had no exterior door. So there was only one door, no windows that opened.
Wow.
He shut the door and basically told me with, a few abrasive words that I'm not going anywhere. And I said, okay, well, that's where you have to think on your feet. And I had told him, I said, well, the police have already been notified. This is now a hostage situation. So if you want to have a life after this, it's probably wise that you let me go.
Exactly.
Well, went to go get his phone to call whoever, and I basically broke out of my own house and had to fight my way out until he started abusing my mother.
Wow.
This incident took place in front of my house, in front of the neighbor's house. He was in my vehicle. I mean, it was rough. All the while, my mother never hung up the 911 phone call.
Wow.
So we got out, and long story short, the legality part of it had, ensued. Um, and one thing that I find important and a lot of people find controversial based on domestic violence, because you do battle PTSD, you do battle anxiety and depression and all of these things. Um, I took it upon myself while going through these court proceedings and state attorneys and going through the Dawn Center, which is my local women's advocate group. They offer counseling and rehabilitation services and all of those things. I went through therapy and I was diagnosed with PTSD. And all the while, they gave me the resources that I needed. They provided me a attorney to show up for the restraining order,
Right.
free of charge. They gave me guidance as to certain things that I needed. If you needed relocation funds, if you needed help for your children. Fortunately for me, I don't have any children. It was just me.
Thank
Um,
God.
yeah. So those things really helped me. I went to therapy for quite some time. Um, and I did a lot of things on my own to help. The one thing about PTSD is it's triggered by certain sounds, certain scenarios, certain
Right.
social environments. So I feel like helping with PTSD, you need to find your triggers
Right.
regarding that incident. Mine specifically was the sound of glass breaking. So every morning when I would wake up, I would play an audio clip of glass breaking as I was getting ready. And it just gets to a point where it's repetition, repetition, repetition.
Mm.
Um, and you can kind of get past it. And I'm at a
Gotcha.
point now, I'm 2 years, 1 month, and 6 days since the day that I got out. And I can
Congratulations.
thank you. And I can honestly say that it's not over. I still have days where you just get flooded with memories that you've pushed into the back burner, but it's learning how to cope and how to talk yourself through it and help other people. And advocacy is a big part of it. You know, People who deal with domestic violence or sexual violence, what have you, they're quiet, they're ashamed, they're
Yes.
afraid to talk about it. It's very taboo, even in today's
Yes.
society.
Mhm.
There's so many issues out there, women's equality, all of these movement groups. But yet, domestic violence and sexual violence, I feel like, is such a minuscule part of it. Nobody's
Right.
talking about it. And
Exactly.
that's what needs to be
Hmm.
broadcasted. If you're a survivor, speak up, because somewhere, somehow, you are going to touch somebody's heart that needs it. And that's where I'm at. I don't have any kind of advocacy group or anything like that. But I did create an Instagram page as a platform to reach out to other women, or other people in general. It doesn't just happen to women who
Right.
have questions, who need guidance. And I want to be that person that can help and give my testimony and let them know that there is life after
Yes.
this.
Yes, it
And
is.
it's just incredible, and I was talking to a close friend of mine not that long ago, and I said, it is absolutely incredible to think 3 years ago, where I was and where I'm at now. I have my dream job. I have, a good income. I have my family back, my friends back. It is possible. Just because you're in the dark doesn't mean you have to stay there.
Exactly, that's the truth, and that's the thing that we want to that I want to share, and that's why I came up with the journey back from domestic violence, because it is light at the end of the tunnel. I dealt with domestic violence myself, so I know what it is. And mine may not have been big as others, but we all have that story. So, and let's talk about as a child. You say you went through it with the gymnastic coach, being in gymnastics. How did that make you feel as a child? Can you recall that feeling when this person was taking advantage of a minor? How did that make you feel at that moment?
So at a young age, I don't have a whole lot of memories surrounding
Okay,
it, but I do remember not understanding. And I
okay,
remember
yes,
coming home from practice and telling my mother what had happened. And that was when she kind of raised the alarm and said, "What did you just say?"
yes,
And obviously things went there. And, the certain gymnastics coach that I had been dealing with, we basically broke the mold on that because I
right,
wasn't the only one in my gym. There was, I think, 13 other girls in my gym, and spread
wow,
across 4 different counties. There were plenty of other women. So since then,
wow,
he's been labeled as a sexual predator and can no longer coach or be around children. So it's all about, listening to people and not just immediately judging. It's understanding when to seek help, specifically from the legal source,
right,
the police, and when not to. Because sometimes, even as a friend, if your best friend is going through it and you know it, sometimes calling the police isn't always the answer
right.
right away. It can
At the
actually make
moment,
things
yes.
worse.
Hmm.
Right.
It could extend, like it could go farther. Now, when you say you was in a bathroom and he pitched the candle, you was in the bathroom, and the moment that you said it made sense to fight. What was you feeling at that moment, just sitting in that bathroom? What was those feelings like? What was going through your head at that moment to say it's time to fight?
I just got to a point where he had gotten me so down on everything. Um, I was depressed. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have any family. I didn't have self esteem. I had no finances to fall back on. The only thing that I had was him and his mother. And um, it kind of hit me, how much I had lost. When you're
Right,
in a productive relationship, you gain things, you gain
right,
happiness, you gain
yeah,
memories, you gain friends, you don't lose. And that's a big thing. So I got to a point where I said, I have nothing. So what do I have to lose? I've already
right.
lost it.
Right. I'm down at the bottom. It's time to fight. And I mean, that's something that, and I like that point that you brought up, that you were sitting in the emergency room and the nurse didn't know. And that's something that's probably we need to somehow, some way have like a sign, because even now they have this sign where you do this and this during video chat. So what it is that we need to, that's something that we need to find a way to get nurses involved, of saying, one, the abuser there and you can't talk, because it's a lot of women that's gone through abuse and they really can't talk. So being isolated, and I have a book that called Sister I Got Your Back, and I talk about isolation. During your isolation time, what was that looking like? I know you didn't have friends. I know family wasn't around. Talk about the isolation part where it's just you and him. Like expand on that to for women to really know that this is what isolation look. It's not just saying that it's just us. This is what it looked like. Give us a picture of
So,
what it looked like.
so for me, obviously, the isolation got deeper as the months progressed.
Okay.
In the initial stages, it was, you can't hang out with them. They're single. You need to be, friends with somebody who's married,
Okay.
the, just finding excuses to isolate each person each time. Um, or in my case, it was him picking fights with my friends to the point where they didn't want to be involved or come over.
Wow.
Um, there was instances where while I was sleeping, he went on my social media and was writing really, really vulgar, terrible things to my friends to the point where they deleted me
Wow.
or, just flat out wiped their hands because they thought it was coming from me. Some of
Right.
the ones that were closer to me obviously
No.
knew that that wasn't me.
Mhm.
But they also knew that if they had responded, things would get worse. So that's kind of how it started. And then once I was in that isolation realm, you really don't have a safe space, if you will. Um, your friends, your family, at any point, you can go to a family member and cry and vent. And, you know, I don't care if, it's something in a simple relationship where he brought home the wrong bread. You don't have anybody to talk to. So when things get bad, that's the tactic. So not only are you being abused, you can't you can't talk about it to anybody. And then
It's just something
to
you holding in.
yeah, you kind of have to just be quiet because when you discuss it with them and try to, oh, well, let's get you some counseling, maybe it's something going on, trying to be that person, a lot of times it backfires in your face. And in my case, it did. Um, so I couldn't talk about it. I had to internalize everything. Um, and then really my only safe space became the gym. And to an extent, I couldn't make friends at the gym. I really couldn't talk to anybody at the gym. Um, but I started pouring all of these emotions and feelings into the weights.
In the
Um,
workout. Mhm.
and the workouts, knowing full well what was ahead of me. I knew I was going to get out. It was just a matter of when. So really, that was kind of my only safe space, if you will. Um, at work, sometimes he would sit in the parking lot, show up random times. So my safe space wasn't even at work. And with what I do for a living, it was like living a double life. I am a hairstylist. At the time, I was the assistant manager of my salon, and I had a full book, a full following. I was great at what I did. Um, but when people go into a salon, they're there for you to pamper them. They don't want to hear about your
Your
problems or
story.
your
Mhm.
issues. So you go to work and that's no longer a safe space. You can't talk to anybody about it. Um, so I had to put on this facade, not just for work, but for people I ran into in public. It just became a double life. And really, I feel like that's the definition of isolation when you realize you're living two separate lives from being outside that front door and inside your front door. That's a big problem and you need to get out.
Right, right. And that is like because you don't have nowhere safe no more. Everything, like you said, work become a place where he was sitting outside, which was crazy. So what the hell did he I know you said you guys didn't have kids. Did he ever think or did he ever talk about kids? Or that subject just never came up?
He did. He did. He
Okay.
was trying to, right as I mean, more and more that I would start fighting back verbally, saying, no, 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 or I'm going to leave you kind of thing, the more that that became a pressing issue. And that's another tactic. A lot of men,
Mhm.
it's not necessarily in this situation regarding mine. Um, I feel that he didn't necessarily want a child. He wanted the control of having a child so I couldn't leave.
Right.
And when that
Okay.
became evident that that was not going to happen, I'm a huge advocate for animals. Huge. I mean, really for everybody, but
Right.
animals specifically, I had a dog there that was like my therapy animal. So probably about 3 to 4 weeks before I left, he got a brand new puppy and I was taking care of it. So again, another form of control.
Control. Hmm.
Um, and it just, you have to be stronger than that and understand that things are going to be okay. And once you get out on the other side, the authorities will do what they need to do to protect, animals, children, what have you. There's so many resources now. Um, and there's so many people in this network who have been through it, survivors, family members of survivors.
Right.
It's just all you got to do is reach out, and
Right. And
any
get out.
one of us, any one of us can help.
So during the time when you was fighting and you noticed that he hit your mom, did he hit her or pushed her? Or what did he do to your mom? How did that make you feel when he hit your mom? Just laying hands on her, period.
Oh, I was absolutely enraged. For me at the time, my mentality was, well, I'm married. You want to lay your hands on me? You've been doing it for years. Don't you dare touch my mother.
Right.
Um, that was kind of the defining moment where I had to really think about my next move. Um, because I really could have made some poor decisions on, how to handle it.
Yes.
But basically what happened is he ripped the door off the hinges of my vehicle and jumped in on top of my mother. And my mother at the time is maybe 120 pounds, about 4'10", 4'11", little woman. He's
Yes.
pushing 300 pounds, close to 6 foot.
So he had
So
a big old
decided,
weight over her.
oh yeah. So, um, you know, this situation obviously escalated, and I was able to get him out of the vehicle.
Good.
His mother got involved, and before the escape, it was getting pretty bad. But the biggest thing that I can say is a lot of people um, are afraid to call the police, and
Right.
I think that needs to be a discussion. When to call and how to go about doing it, um,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously things change, and certain states are changing the way that they're, I guess you can say, prosecuting domestic
Hmm.
violence.
Right.
I know certain states are only classifying a physical injury as domestic violence now,
Violence. Yeah, they do. Yes, I
but
think that.
just because they haven't put a hand on you yet, a simple shove is enough. You know, being
Right.
mentally abused on the daily is enough. Is that enough nowadays to possibly get them arrested and in cuffs? More than likely not.
Nah.
And
Hmm.
where
Because
I'm
they don't
at,
have signs or they don't have a bruise. It's more than that, and that's I think police officers, first responders and nurses and everybody need to be educated that it's just not the physical signs. It's more of the mental because a lot of people deal with mental abuse than physical abuse because mental abuse, you playing with somebody's mind. And once they have your mind, is it can go any way. They can have control. So after he get arrested, you guys with the court, did he go to jail? Did he get any jail time on that?
so the way that it worked out, and this is what I want to be aware too for a lot of women, you
Okay.
know, it's not over as soon as they get arrested. In his case, he was in jail for a total of 12 hours, roughly, maybe 14 with first appearance. Um, that was it. He got time served,
What?
so the 14 hours, and got put on felony probation for 3 years. And there is an option to end probation early based on good behavior. So I want people to understand it doesn't always go your way. There isn't always going to be justice, but there's things you can do to protect yourself. Um, with me, I kind of took that personally. I felt
Yes.
victimized not only in my situation, but
At the
also
court
by
system.
the at the court system. I felt that, you know, I was wronged. Um, some people, they were cutting them a break, what have you. I mean, you got to deal with the cards that you're dealt. Um, that being said, I took it upon myself to make a promise that nobody would ever lay hands on me again. That being said, I took proper precautions. I worked on my mind before I worked on anything else. And I made sure that I had a restraining order. And, there are certain channels that you can do that make you feel safe. And that's the biggest thing is after coming out on the other side of this is feeling safe again. Some people, when they're in the home of their family, that's all it takes. For
Right.
me, given my situation and how far away I lived from him, I didn't feel safe. There was no place that I felt safe. So again, I went to therapy and I got past all of that and I'm good now. And, now I just try to be more vigilant. I watch a lot of self defense videos for women. Um, I've had my mother, who is a black belt, teach me, if you get grabbed from behind, what do you do? I mean,
Right.
simple things that women
Mm-hmm.
don't think of. There's a huge trend going on right now with the crossbody purses or the
Yes.
backpacks. Those are things that women or anybody of domestic violence need to be aware. You walk around down the street and you live close to, anybody or just in today's society, it becomes a handle to be grabbed and pulled back. So little things like that, changing your daily life, your routine and habits will make you feel safe. And there's a lot to offer in that sense. There's so many people out there that offer free women's self-defense classes. And that's just super important. It really is. If you're not vigilant when you go outside. It doesn't have to be an intimate partner. I mean, we live in a world that is falling apart right now.
It is.
And
It is.
it's just one of those things, that not just in the domestic violence realm, but just being a woman, we are at a disadvantage because a lot of times physically we're strong, we're not as strong or, you know, we don't have the size that someone may have on us. So I just feel like, getting it out there and waking women up in
Right.
general, wake up that
Yes.
we have it inside of us to be self-sufficient. And when you get to that point, there's no stopping you.
Okay. So where is Dominique now today, right now? What's her mind frame? What's her self esteem looking like today? What going through all this and making yourself safe? What's your self esteem like, and what's Dominique like? What's the future hold for Dominique as of now?
So as of right now, like I said, I'm close to, a little over 2 years since, my out. Um, I've done a lot of self-help work. I've read a lot of books. Um, I am, for the most part, okay. I do have random anxiety sometimes, more so in a social setting. So now that COVID is, starting to kind of disintegrate down, things are opening back up.
Float.
Maybe being in a restaurant with, 100 plus people, sometimes big crowds because I can't see everybody, it
Hmm.
makes me a little nervous. I wouldn't say gives me anxiety, but makes me a little nervous or hesitant. Um, but other than that, I'm doing okay. I do have some issues with self-esteem still. That's one of the things, and I feel like for women, that is the lingering. Um, it's just one of those things. We live in a world where, social media is plastering these, perfect bodies or
Yes. Hmm.
this idea of the ideal woman. And so not only are you dealing with the comparison of that, but you're dealing with what was planted in your head years ago.
Right.
In my case, I was beaten, I was battered, I was pushed into the ground so far where I felt like, Gollum from, the Lord of the Rings. I felt completely not
Worthless.
myself. So now I'm working on that. And sometimes it's as simple as, you have nothing to do that day. Get up, do your hair, do your makeup, and say, damn, I'm a beautiful woman. You
Exactly.
have to do things for yourself. Self care is where the healing begins. And that's where I'm at.
So what for women's out there, and I know we talked about the whole Instagram thing that where we met at. Tell us what you're doing on Instagram and where are you going with this whole project of giving women the voice and being that advocate for domestic violence.
So basically, I'm using Instagram as a platform just to reach out to others. I might see a quote that speaks to me and I'll just throw it on my Instagram and maybe it'll reach someone else. Um, a few posts on there are just, personal things, testimony stuff. But outside of the Instagram, I try to do a lot for my local shelters and things like that. I've recently got involved with doing a yearly 5K. You can run it, you can walk it, you could skip it, you could hop it. It doesn't matter how you do it. You just basically purchase your sign up through the website, and that money goes towards, facilitating all of these resources for these women. um, so I've been doing that every year. You get like a little goodie bag and a t-shirt. um, every year I do donations. October is domestic violence awareness month. So that being said, I usually try to do some sort of donation drive. This year I am trying to facilitate a walk,
Okay.
where everybody will wear purple and just get as many people as we can. Let's get some photos. Let's, broadcast it all over the internet. People need to understand or ask questions. How come all of those people are wearing purple? Well, let me tell you.
Exactly.
Um, so really, I'm just trying to broaden the horizons on what I can do as far as fundraising and helping other women, whether it be someone reaching out to me on a direct message or doing a fundraiser or just telling my story. I want people to know, there it comes in many forms. It could be
It
really bad
does.
where you were hospitalized for months. It could be as simple as they didn't let me get a job for the last 18 years until my kids were, an adult, so there's so many forms of this, and it's just kind of the beginning for me. I'm not really sure where the end game is with this, but I know that I'm not going to stop until I help reach as many people as I possibly can and help as many people as I can.
That's good. So I want to say congratulations getting out of that situation because it's not always easy. Some of us die. Some of us women die getting out of these situations. Some don't make it. So
Mhm.
I'm happy that you was able to make it out, go
Thank
through
you.
the motions. And sometimes it is hard. Sometimes you are victimized through the court. And I mean, I think that was shit. He should have got time. Not just a little slap on the wrist because you go through so much, and I think that's another thing that why women's don't come out as much as they should, because we are being re-victimized because of this whole situation, or because he had maybe a little pull in the system or whatever. So you're being re-victimized. It's like, what happened to me? You saying, actually, you didn't say it physically, but you saying it was my fault. And it's not like
Mhm.
women's, it's not our fault that we go through these things. We don't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, I'm gonna be in this domestic violence relationship." Hell no, we don't do that.
Right.
And that's the thing. Like, that's why we have so many. So that's why I wanted to give the journey back from domestic violence, give other women their voice back, and share stories, because I think if we could reach one woman that day, we done did it all. We done did a lot. So as of now, before we close out, what do you have for any lady that's right now that's sitting down watching this show and listening to your story? What you have for them before we close out? Something positive, something encouraging.
I would honestly say just don't lose hope. The moment you lose hope is when you lose any opportunity for you to get out. You need to remain hopeful and start planning accordingly. If you know it's not okay and it's not okay to tell anybody yet, do what I did and start playing the longest game of chess. Put the pieces together that you need to, reach out where you need to. Even if it's simple as downloading Snapchat, messaging somebody and deleting it on your way home. There are ways to work around this, and I just want people to be able to reach out and not be afraid, to share their story.
Thank you so much. So I want to thank Eric. I want to thank Dominique for sharing her story with us, allowing me to give her that platform to share her story. And I want to thank everyone for listening to this podcast and watching it, because I know there's so many women out there right now with this pandemic that's in these domestic violence situations. Know that you can get out, and know that you're not alone. We all here, it's just a simple of Instagram, making an Instagram friend, finding and making a plan, having a plan. Even like Dominique said, just sitting down thinking about it. Don't execute it. Just think it out before you make that move, because if one little wrong thing go wrong, it can take this and blow it way out. So we want to be safe when you're getting out. We want to always have a plan, and make sure we let one friend know. what's going on, and that way that person can be there to help you exit and exit safe. So I want to say thanks again, Dominique, for sharing your story, being open about it, and allowing me to give you that platform to share your story. So I want to thank everybody for watching the journey back from domestic violence. I'm your girl, author Erica, and I just want to say have a nice day. And then yeah, and Dominique, thanks so much.
Thank you.